Hi guys, Olive here today to talk to you about the books I read in October of 2019. I didn't read quite as much as I normally do, what with being extremely busy and preparing for Nonfiction November, but I did manage to read 6 books, beginning with All That Remains, a renowned forensic scientist on death, mortality, and solving crimes by Sue Black. Sue Black is a well-known and well-respected forensic anthropologist in the UK, and I suppose you'd call this her memoir of how she got into the field, the different cases that she's worked on, and ultimately how her work has shaped how she views death, but also how she views life. While I was reading this book, I kept having the thought that, just like you'd expect, it is very similar to Stiff by Mary Roach or When Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by Caitlin Doughty. There is a lot of overlap with some of the science and some of the medical stuff in here. But it's as though you took that style of book and combined it with Being Mortal by Atul Gawande, because there's a lot deeper stuff in here. I don't think this will shock you, but there are portions of this book that are so difficult to read, namely the sections dealing with disaster victim identification, but then there's also one section where they need to exhume corpses for assistance in a war crime case. It's difficult reading, but the whole way through you can feel how deeply personal it must have been for her to write this. She does not hold back at all. She talks about the method she uses to compartmentalize the work that she does, so she can squeeze it into a tiny little space and push it way back to the back of her brain so it doesn't destroy her mentally. But she does talk about the ways in which work has affected her on a day-to-day basis, the things that it makes her think about. And she also admits to a crippling fear of rodents. A woman who deals with corpses all day is terrified of rodents. Who knew? I thought this book was fantastic. Obviously, don't pick this book up if you're not into books on death. And also, I would caution you away from it if you are looking for a book that is either straight science or straight memoir. This book is a really great mixture of both. But this is probably one of the best books on death I have ever read. Moving on to my first pick for Victober, which is also the book that I am personally choosing to blame for the fact that I did not read as much in October as I would have liked to. That book is The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. This book is all about a young man who was hired by a wealthy gentleman to restore his art collection and also serve as drawing instructor for his 2 young nieces who happen to live with him. But on the way to go to this job, to go to the house where he'll be living and working, this young man runs into a woman dressed entirely in white. She is terrified and she's looking for his help. He doesn't get her name, but once he arrives at the house, he starts asking very pointed questions, trying to determine her identity, and he's particularly unnerved when he discovers that that young woman in white bears an uncanny resemblance to one of his employer's nieces. Just like in The Moonstone, Wilkie Collins uses his great multi-narrative style, allowing different characters to take over at different points in time, letting them give you their perspective, letting all their eccentricities hang out. And it's honestly a very interesting exercise for you as a reader, trying to figure out if these people are really being honest with you or not. I love the way Wilkie Collins writes characters. So many of them are larger than life, and he is really not afraid to lay it on thick with the ones that go way over the top. Like the artist's employer, the uncle of the 2 young girls, he is an extreme hypochondriac, and I was laughing so hard during his section. And I really have to commend him for writing what might be the most interesting, complex, and just downright best villain I've ever encountered in fiction. What makes this character so exceptional as a villain is that even though you know the entire time that that character is a villain, half the time you will like this person, and not in a love-to-hate kind of way. At so many different points when I was reading this book, I felt that it was set up to earn at least 4, if not 5 stars from me, and certainly the way I've been talking about it thus far indicates that I would have given it a high rating, but I only gave it 3 stars because I hated how long it was. I understand that this book was published serially and there's a lot of extra padding because of that fact, but when you put all the sections together into one novel, there is so much unnecessary detail and I kept stubbing my toe on it over and over again. I felt like it would take so long to get from plot point to plot point, and I understand that at certain points that's justified to let you feel the frustration the characters are feeling at the time. But for most of that, it just made the book drag, and it affected my enjoyment enough where I really just couldn't justify giving this any more than 3 stars. So when that was finally over, I picked up my second Victober pick, Lady Audley Secret by Mary Elizabeth Braddon. This is what's known as a sensationalist novel, and in it a young, beautiful governess catches the eye of a local widowed baronet. She marries him and elevates herself considerably in both financial standing and social standing. But the baronet's nephew, the heir to his title, has a sneaking suspicion there's something not quite right about his new aunt based on the way that she's behaving. So he starts to do a little bit of investigation into her background and then starts to gather evidence of the secret that he suspects. Before I say anything else about this book, I should say that I guessed the secret nearly immediately, and that's not a boasting thing. I think things are pretty neatly laid out by the time you're a third of the way into the book. So I think by the time you're to that point, most people will have guessed what's going on. I think what I'm trying to say here is that this book was longer than it needed to be. I think this would have made a very effective novella. I really enjoyed the characters and their dynamics with one another, but it was just so melodramatic. I swear all of them belonged in a soap opera. I will admit it was a memorable one, but I'm really unsure at this point about whether or not I should go on to read any other of Mary Elizabeth Braddon's works. Let me know if you think I should. My absolute favorite book of the month was called How to Catch a Mole by Mark Hammer. This is an incredible contemplative memoir of a man who spent most of his career catching moles, like the ones that live in the ground, not the ones collecting secrets. In this book, we're going along with him on jobs. We're experiencing the nature that he sees. We're hearing his deep private thoughts on life while he's in the quiet doing his work. He, of course, talks about the moles themselves, his knowledge of their biology and their behavior, and how he uses that knowledge to be able to catch them. But really, the whole book is a build-up to a point that comes at the end of the book where he realizes that he just can't do this anymore. The journey to get there is filled with some seriously gorgeous writing, and it's the type that I love so much, where it's crisp and clean. There's not an extraneous word to be found. It's kept simple to make it more powerful. And also he concludes every single chapter with a beautiful poem. If you're like me and you like a combination of gorgeous nature writing but also deep introspection like you would find in H is for Hawk or Lab Girl, then I highly recommend you pick this one up. I have to admit that 2019 has been a really rough year in fiction for me, and this next book, unfortunately, proves that point. That book is Her Fearful Symmetry by Audrey Niffenegger. I picked this one for October because it's pitched as a ghost story. 2 young American women, twins, inherit a flat in London from their aunt who has died of cancer. There are some rules stipulated in the will that go along with their inheritance. They are not allowed to sell the flat until they've lived in it for a year. And also, their mother and father aren't allowed to step foot inside of it. And if that last part seems kind of weird, their mother and their aunt were also twins and had a falling out years prior of unknown causes. So these 2 twins, Julia and Valentina, who have never lived lives separate from one another, move into the flat and get to know the neighbors. They get to know their aunt's boyfriend at the time of her death. Oh, and their aunt's ghost is gently haunting the place. I didn't mind the setup to this book, although I did find the twins irritating almost instantly. But then the ghost element is introduced, which is kind of strange, but I decided to go with it. It was after that the weird stuff really started happening. Like the twins getting involved with significantly older men who they had no business getting involved with. Like, for example, a married man in their building, and also their aunt's boyfriend, who was her boyfriend at the time of her death, and now she's haunting the place, can see this all go down, and one of the twins is getting involved with him. That's weird. I did guess the plot twist of this one too, but I'm not even proud of it, because I remember having the thought halfway through the book that might be what was going on, but then dismissing it like, no, that would be far too stupid. And well, this book is just a mess. There's so much strange but normalized cruelty going on throughout it in both straightforward and backhanded ways. And there's so much lying and deceit between characters that all of them just decide to swallow because why exactly? I suppose if you're dying to get your hands on anything even resembling The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield, You could consider this one since there are some similarities, but overall I recommend that you avoid it. And the last book I'd like to talk to you about in this wrap-up video was a new release in October called Horror Stories by Liz Phair. Despite what the title may lead you to believe, this is not a collection of horror stories. It's actually a memoir written in essays by 90s and beyond music icon Liz Phair. This is kind of a hard one to talk about because it doesn't really have a central unifying message or theme. It's just kind of a collection of essays of different things that have happened to her throughout her life, bouncing around in time, so it's not chronological. She does talk a lot about the different lessons that all of these experiences have taught her. Her tone is very reflective, and I thought the entire thing was extremely well written. I was really interested to see how her voice would translate from music to prose, and I thought it was very successful in that regard. Her music and her writing are both very assertive. She is extremely honest. She's okay with being herself. She's okay with showing herself to be a sexual person. She's okay with pointing directly at her mistakes. If you like Liz Phair, or you're simply interested in hearing more about her experiences, the ones on tour are really fun to read about. I don't think you'll be disappointed. So those are the 6 books that I read during October of 2019. I would love to hear from you if you've read any of these books, if you've heard of any of them, or if you'd now like to read them after hearing me talk about them. You can put that or any other comments or questions you may have down in the comment section below. But if you prefer to chat with me somewhere other than YouTube, I am on a variety of different places on social media, and the links to all of my profiles are in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.